Our meeting is now open for the sharing of testimonies of healing through the study and practice of Christian Science. Tom from Iowa, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I wanted to give gratitude tonight for healing of stomach cramps. For a time, this would plague me and would make it impossible for me to walk, and I would have to lie down to find any relief. I sought practitioner help in this church, and now there is no longer this disturbance. The problem has not returned. My toe has also been healed from an injury. Thank you to my holy practitioner, for I have now found relief from this. I give my reverence to Christ Jesus, who has led the way, and also to Mary Baker Eddy. These are two God's faithful chosen witnesses, and I am grateful for all they have done for us. And thanks be to this church and its holy mission in preserving this sacred science and giving it out to all the world. May any earnest seeker find the right answer to his need on their website, which is prolific in material for studying and learning to practice and live Christian Science. I am happy to be here tonight with you all, and may all have a good night, and thank you also for those inspiring readings. Good night.
Thank you. Donna from Oregon, go ahead, please.
About 3 weeks ago, there was a wildfire burning near here. It was reported to be the biggest one in the U.S. at that time. It was headed for our town with the wind blowing at this direction. Everyone was encouraged to have emergency stuff packed in their car, even though the fire wasn't up to level 1 yet. Like everyone else, I have so many things I value that it made it extremely hard to decide what to save. I called my practitioner and asked for her always helpful prayers. She said, of course, she would help, and she'd also contact the weather committee for their help. At that time, I think the fire was about 10 to 15 miles away and was estimated to be 10% contained, be about 10% contained. It had been at 10% for several days. That night it rained, and for the next couple of days, we had some more rain. The next report said the fire was 70 to 80% contained. It was so obvious where the help came from. At that point, a lot of the firefighters moved on to other fires. That was the last I heard about it because everyone got back to their lives and stopped talking about it. I thank my wonderful practitioner for her prayers and support, and I thank each and every one of you on the weather committee. I know for sure this came out good for me and the town because of the prayers from all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Rebecca from Indiana, go ahead, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Bruce, for the readings tonight on Truth is Always the Victor. When I was 16 years old, my parents gave me for my birthday a little diamond, two little diamonds on each side with a ruby. And I thought it was the most beautiful ring I've ever seen in my life, and I loved it. A couple years later, I realized I lost it. It wasn't on my finger. And so I was upset. My mom and I talked about it. Nothing's lost in God's kingdom. And I think I really wasn't accepting this or believing it because it was a year later we couldn't find it. So one day we were talking, my sister and my mom and I, and something came up about the ring, and my mother looked me straight in the eyes and very kindly but firmly said, "There's nothing lost in God's kingdom." And for the first time, I really accepted this, and I really understood what she said, and it was a total acceptance and feeling. And about 30 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was my uncle, my mom said, and he was asking for me. And that was strange because he never calls. So I went, I answered it, and he said, "Do you have a little pink ring with two little diamonds on each side?" And I said, "Yes, I did." And he had it in his hand. He had found it out in his garage. I don't know how, but that's where it was. I had my ring back. About 3 years later, I was doing some work down in the garage, and I heard a ting, and I thought, oh, that's my ring. And I thought, no problem. There was nothing in the garage floor. We looked and looked, even got a flashlight in the dark, did everything we could, couldn't find it. And then for the next 2 days, we had heavy storms. So I thought, well, okay. And it was about a year later again, we were talking, my mom and I, and something came up on my ring, and she said again the same way, there's nothing lost in God's kingdom. And I really accepted it again. I thought, because you think, it can't happen twice, but at that time I thought, I really understand what she's saying. So she left to do some grocery shopping, came back and came into the room and handed me my ring. And I was like, what? And she said she drove down into the garage, and when she got out, she saw something that glistened and caught her eye, and she looked down, and there was my ring. So, very grateful for this. So, in 1992, I was working at Target warehouse at night, and we packaged on a conveyor belt, packed boxes with all their stuff, and we shipped them off to all the different places. And at this time, it was winter time, and at that date, it was like 20 below. So our fingers were cold, everything we were doing. When I got home, I realized my ring was gone. And instead of learning to immediately know what I've been learning, I got upset, and it's lost. That's it. I don't even want it back. I can't take this. Being silly. So it's always bothered me since then. I didn't think too much on it, but since being with Plainfield, I really have been learning a lot. And this past Christmas, I really thought, I was being taught a very serious lesson and what it all means. So I really started not so much thinking the ring back, but just what I was learning, how nothing is lost in God's kingdom. And throughout the years, I've been in different jewelry shops, asked people, or looked around, at the rings, and nothing compared to that ring. And I would even ask them about the design, and no, they don't do it. It was very simple. So this February, I was in a jewelry shop and getting a ring fixed, just a little prawn, and they had an area that said estate sale. So I walked over and I looked, and immediately my eyes fell down on this little ring. And I said, please come here. And she came over and she got out the ring for me, and I couldn't believe it. It was the ring. I was so shocked that I just handed it back to her, and I walked out of the shop. I was just shocked, and I talked to my husband about it, and he said, well, did you buy it? And I said, no. And he goes, well, why not? So I went back a couple of days later when they were open again, and I did buy the ring. And I went home and I told my husband, I said, this is it. The looks of it. I said, now I know it can't be the real ring. And he said, well, why not? It was at an estate sale. You don't know if it got packaged in that box from Target and somebody found it and they wore it, and however it came to be. So it brought me so close to God. It really helps a lot on knowing God is with us at all times. And he can do anything. And this is why nothing's ever lost in God's kingdom. Sorry. But I'm truly grateful for this, because it's such a blessing. And for Mary Baker Eddy for teaching all these lessons on what to use and how to pray and how it is true and why it is true. Last week, my husband hurt his back very badly, and he couldn't even get to the restroom. And we were working in prayer, and it wasn't getting any better. We were trying, so I called the Plainfield practitioner, and she immediately answered the text, and she worked with us. And the next day, he said he felt a relief in his back, and he's back up and doing everything. He drives around and picks up what we call scrap metal, heavy stuff, and he's busy doing that again, and back fine, and I'm very grateful for this. One more thing. 2 years ago, I started getting the calendar, the Plainfield calendar statement, and I thought, I want to do something positive on Facebook and also help people understand our religion. And each day I take a picture of it, put it on my Facebook, and I've had great responses from people that I'm shocked that before wouldn't have had nothing to do with, Christian Science. And they're hitting that they like what the messages are. So I'm very grateful for that too. Thank you for tonight, and thank you, everyone out there. God bless.
Thank you. Barbara or Ken from Pennsylvania, go ahead, please.
Good evening. Both our iPad and printer, actually, I'm sorry, I'm skipping something here. How grateful we can be that all good is possible to God, even when it comes to ordinary challenges. Both our iPad and printer were new this year. Recently, the iPad suddenly froze up, something we had not experienced with previous iPads, and a piece of paper became stuck in our printer, becoming torn and wrinkled and then completely inaccessible. Nothing we knew to do solved either problem. Both items are pretty essential to us generally, and especially our access to Plainfield Church resources. We made some effort to find solutions on the internet, but we're not finding understandable help. I'm not sure when we began to panic, but it wasn't far into the process. We texted a member of this church who gave us support and wisely suggested we put these concerns aside for a while, which we did do. That night, a Sunday night, as I was lying in bed and praying, it came to me exactly what to do for the iPad, which was instantly successful. Now I could listen to Sunday's roundtable, which I had missed. As usual, it was excellent and certainly needed. Monday morning, I consulted the internet again and almost immediately found just the instructions we needed, and my husband was easily able to remove the remainder of the wrinkled, bangled paper. The fear had been allayed, and we could hear what to do. Thank you to God, the source of all good, to Plainfield Church for supporting the practice of Christian Science in so many ways, and to the dear church member so willing and able to help us for just the help we needed, certainly the peace. God bless one and all, and thank you, Bruce, for the wonderful readings tonight.
Thank you. Mara from Mississippi, go ahead, please.
Hello. Thank you, Bruce, for the inspiring readings tonight. I would like to say how thankful I am that I found the Plainfield Christian Science Independent Church. I am an example of a person whose life was totally transformed by Christian Science and this church. A few years ago, when I found Plainfield, I was at my lowest point, both physically and mentally. I had no motivation to get out of bed or eat and no desire to do anything. Discovering my relationship with God and my purpose has helped so much. I'm thankful for all the guidance and support from my Plainfield practitioner. We learn here at Plainfield that our joy and happiness is from God, not material things, and how joy and happiness comes first before anything else. One way to feel it and be able to get in that mindset is by being grateful to God for all you have and what God has already given you. I'm so grateful for the website and the abundance of articles, along with the useful weekly roundtable discussions that are always available to keep me on track. I love being able to participate in the Unity Watches. It's so beautiful to be able to see our watches and prayers in effect. This past Saturday night, my son came into the room as the Unity Watch was being read aloud. The watch actually focused on, and this is a quote, lifting the veil of wrong conceptions with a correct understanding of Mary Baker Eddy, Science and Health, and Christian Science, end quote. After spending time alone and in prayer, I joined my son along with my husband. My son started asking me several questions about the Unity Watch and Christian Science. We've had other discussions in the past, and initially when I first found the Plainfield Church, I had a lot of resistance from both my kids. They read negative false information about Mary Baker Eddy and Christian Science from the internet. Throughout the last few years, my kids have seen the change in me and my husband's support for the Plainfield Christian Science Church as well. My kids have experienced healing from Christian Science firsthand, And I'm so grateful that I had all the answers to my son's questions. He concluded that the Plainfield people really are special Christian people and agreed with many things I explained. During our discussion, I realized this was exactly what we were all praying about during our Unity Watch that very night. I'm very happy to be here tonight. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you. Tony or Lenny from Georgia. Go ahead, please.
Bruce, thank you for those readings tonight. Very inspiring, and that lesson of Joseph and his obedience, just incredible faithfulness he had through all those incredible challenges that he was put in front of, or that was put in front of him. There's a quote, and it's really meant a lot to me, and I really feel like it really describes what's happened to me. It's in 2 Corinthians. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. And that quote has just kept coming to me about truth creating a new creature. And that really describes what has happened to me when I was first exposed to this church and some of the people here in this church, the Christ spirit here. The real seed of truth was impregnated in my thought, and it was like this little grain of mustard seed or a little thing of yeast. You know, you just need a little bit, and everything is transformed. And I just think back, I'm completely a new creature, and all things are become new now. I see things in a new light, the right light, as we read in a beautiful hymn, The Real Reality. So just my deepest gratitude to the practitioners and all the workers and the love and the Spirit of Christ here that is putting that seed, that yeast out in the world. And that's what we pray for, that truth to continue to make new creatures. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Shardy.
Good evening. My gratitude this evening is about God's governing and protecting His kingdom. During the tropical storm last week, there was a prediction for tornadoes in 13 New Jersey counties, and to my knowledge, that prediction did not manifest or materialize at all, nor did we have days of torrential rain as predicted. God governs His kingdom. Several people were doing watches consistently, and I am sure many others were praying. William McCracken writes, quote, "The true atmosphere is therefore always harmonious, and the belief that atmosphere is physical can be properly controlled by the spiritual realization of the kingdom of heaven." Mary Baker Eddy is very clear about God's dominion and ours as reflection about all facets of weather, and she insisted on careful and complete watching until everything is returned to normal, as she herself demonstrated with storms and heat, etc. I also thank my practitioner and this church for support and encouragement about all aspects of weather watching and all our watching. And it's all done for locally and nationally and internationally. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary.
I'm so grateful to have learned that Christian Science does heal, and it takes care of everything in our lives if we let it. And I was thinking recently about an experience I had. It was a while ago, but I was awakened one night in the middle of the night with a lot of congestion. And even though I was very tired, I couldn't get back to sleep. And as I was praying, a statement came to me that my wife likes to remind me of from the article Fidelity and Miscellaneous Writings, where Mrs. Eddy writes, "Too soon we cannot turn from disease in the body to find disease in the mortal mind, and its cure in working for God." Well, I felt God was trying to tell me something, and here I was in bed in the middle of the night. What could I do for God? Well, I could pray, and so that's what I did. I began to pray for our church, our members, for our community. And I began to pray for our nation and for the whole world. And as I was praying and expanding my thought, I could feel the love of God wrapping His creation in His love. Well, eventually I went back to sleep, and when I awoke in the morning, the congestion was gone, and it did not return. And I had a very productive day. So I'm so grateful for this healing, for the many healings I've experienced as a result of Christian Science practice. I'm so grateful to Mary Baker Eddy for discovering the science of Christianity and for giving it to all mankind. And grateful for what I'm learning in this church. And thank you also for the readings tonight. Very, very fine readings. So glad to be here tonight.
Thank you.
Debbie from Illinois.
Debbie from Illinois, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Within the last several days, I wrote the following text to my practitioner. I am very grateful for God and my progress. A few days ago, my mantra was, God says I am perfect. What say you? I tried working with this morning, but it just didn't work. Then God said to me, I say you are spiritual. What say you? I am working with this, and now I feel the power of that truth. I adopted a dog 2 weeks ago, and I know that God was in the middle of the entire process, so I know it is right. So much love. Mortal mind has been trying to get me to believe that I am limited in mobility and my ability to give Zoe what she needs. I've been putting this belief down, knowing that God brought Zoe into my life, and He will provide us both with everything that we need. This morning, while doing a small task, I knew I was in tune with God, and God did show me everything I needed and made it very easy to complete the task. As Zoe and I were walking this morning with much joy and gratitude, God told me I have all now in the land of milk and honey if I let Him. That's the key, if I let Him. I am going to study Exodus 3, verses 8 and 17, and Exodus 33, verse 3, and Numbers 14, verse 8. I am very grateful for all your support, for the support of our church, and God's ever-present love, care, and guidance. I know my progress as I emerge gently from matter into spirit. Think not to thwart the spiritual ultimate of all things, but come naturally into spirit through better health and morals as a result of spiritual growth. That was a quote from Science and Health, page 485, lines 14 to 17. Among other truths that my practitioner sent to me, she sent me hymn 247. Oh, walk with God along the road, your strength he will renew. Wait on the everlasting God, and he will walk with you. Ye shall not do your daily task without your God repair, but on his work your blessing ask, and prove his glory there. Ye shall not faint, ye shall not fail. In spirit ye are strong. Each task divine ye still shall hail, and blend it with a song. I am very grateful for this progress that I'm making, for the support of my practitioner, everyone here at our church, and God's everlasting care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Luba from Ohio.
Luba from Ohio. Go ahead, please.
Last week we had a tornado that passed over my area and over the area that I live in, and we were told to go into our basements. Gratefully, this passed, and with no damage done here, for which I am so very grateful. Also, this past week I couldn't find my wallet after returning from some shopping. I affirmed, as we all know in science, nothing is ever lost. After quietly pondering this, I retraced the event in my mind and came to the conclusion that the wallet came home with me. And so I continued to look and found it had slipped out of my pocket and behind the driver's seat under the carpet. Oh my gosh, I was so grateful and thank God for his continuous protection, and that we persist and never give up. I'm so grateful to God, Christian Science, and the support of my practitioner. Thank you so much for tonight's reading.
Thank you. Jeremy.
I am very grateful for all I am learning here about Christian Science and for the opportunity to have regular practitioner support. I'm grateful also for tonight's readings. In those readings, it had what Mary Baker Eddy wrote on page 119 of Miscellaneous Writings. Quote, "We are responsible for our thoughts and acts, and instead of aiding other people's devices by obeying them and whining over misfortune, rise and overthrow both." End quote. I spent a lot of time before coming to Plainfield going along with the thoughts and opinions of those people I loved, because I thought it was important to be loyal. But then, when the results of those opinions went poorly, sometimes exactly the way I thought it would, I would definitely whine about it. It was only after God removed me from that old life and brought me here that I started to learn from my practitioner the importance of being loyal to God alone. That idea, to be loyal to God and not to person, was life-changing all on its own. Just in that, I saw where I went wrong so many times, and learned that loyalty itself isn't the problem. Loyalty is actually a very good quality, but only when it's directed towards God, who is truth. I am very grateful to Christian Science and my practitioner for teaching me how to rise and overthrow all the opinions and misplaced loyalties I came here with, and to learn to, quote, trust in truth and have no other trust, end quote, as was also read tonight from page 171 of Miscellany. What a blessing it is to be a member of this church and to be here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have a testimony from Imogen in Australia.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this beautiful meeting tonight, and thank you for those inspired readings. God first brought me online to Plainfield Independent in 2020. Recently, a practitioner at this church told me that we learn through osmosis. This caused me to realize the sheer depth that I had learned from a blessed and holy practitioner here in Australia for nearly 20 years, learning from him every day. And with this realisation, I also realised that during my visit to Plainfield Independent, that, again, I have learned so much, more than I even realised at the time. I was incredibly strengthened, and for this I offer my deepest and humble thanks. During my visit to Plainfield, I was afforded many opportunities to sit in the church to pray, both in the empty church as well as with the precious Plainfield congregation. During these moments, I learned that God has forever blessed the holy cause of Christian Science as given by Mary Baker Eddy and reaching back to Christ Jesus and the early prophets beyond. It is all the same unbroken truth, the science of the Christ, the very truth about God. This citation from Collectania expresses some of what I learnt during my first visit to Plainfield Independent. Quote, "There is only one heart. That is the great heart of divine love. It is beating for all mankind, and it is beating for you." End quote. I don't know what God has in store, but I do say to God above, thank you for bringing me to Plainfield Independent. I will never forget the kindness, the sweetness, the Christliness that you showed, and I will never forget the holy, uplifting experience of attending testimony meetings and Sunday worship at this church. What a beautiful way to live. The precious website is a lifeline for any honest seeker, but there is no comparison to what it feels like to sit in that church pew and be with you all. It really is the experience of a lifetime to be there. It is my wish and desire to be always here. So let's see what the dear Father unfolds. Thank you, God. Thank you, Christ Jesus. Thank you, Mary Baker Eddy. Thank you to our Plainfield practitioners, teachers and workers, and so much love to you all.
Thank you. Craig.
Hello. Thank you, Bruce, for those good readings. Very good readings, and I've learned, like King David, and we all need God all the time. Just last week, I was trying to connect with my son because he needed our help, but he wasn't responding. We love him, and evidently, I knew that love would bring him home. He's so I asked for practitioner support so that we could help him, so he could work out some issues he had, and I was given that loving support. Well, initially, he still wasn't responding except to text. But then he did. Friday night he called and wanted to talk. And that was, I had made a prayer and made a decision that was it. He had to obey God by that next day. Otherwise, we were going to have to do something drastic. Well, I prayed knowing that love would move him and integrate and moves all God's children to do the right thing and to be in the right place. Well, for the practitioner support, the next morning I went outside and he was there. He had slept overnight in his car. He could have come in, but he didn't, so. And I knocked on the window and said, please come in. And from there on, we talked, we worked out our issues, and took care of his car and put him back on the right track for further meetings and taking the next steps so that he could grow up trusting God. Because, no one should ever be fearful of people that love them or of God, because God's always going to either forgive you and put you in the right direction, or He always lifts up, and this is what He's seeing, and I wouldn't have seen it if I didn't have the help of a practitioner in this church, and Mary Baker Eddy's Truth. Thank God for this place that, reclaims people and brings them together and fixes things, fixes lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce, for the reading tonight. And also, it's a certainty now, I know, that truth is always the victor. I have two testimonies. The first one from Germany. And she says that earlier this week, I almost fainted and fell while walking to go teach. I kept holding to the thought that God's idea never falls and can only live and move in God. Two women helped me up, and I just sang to myself, "Oh, gentle presence, peace and joy and power." If I have this gentle presence always with me, I can only fall in the arms of God, and there is nothing going on but love. I can only express divine love, and there is no evidence of anything but this love going on. I recalled previous testimonies I have received and gave gratitude and turned my thought only to God. I felt such joy and power come through me, so I went to my appointment. But my knees seemed to tingle. I knew this was not true about me or anyone, and that no idea of God has ever fallen. We are all carried by God, and this love is always with me and everyone. I began to think of peace, and that only love and light bless people in the Middle East and everywhere. I continue to think of the most recent and some older testimonies which prove to me that I am worthy of healing. It became so clear that I could never fall out of the love of the one mind. So I taught my class and forgot about the fall. I sent good thoughts to those who came to mind. When I left my student's house, she looked different and happier. I told her that she was radiant and had the right to express creatively, and she was appreciative of this. I went home and was astonished that my leggings were intact, slightly dirty, but not bloody. When I took a shower, only dirt seemed to fall off, and the skin was lightly rubbed, but there was nothing to see. The next day, I was drawn to listen to more testimonies on the Plainfield YouTube channel, as well as the readings. Some of the comments from roundtables I attended came to me to awaken me more of my oneness with God. The so-called fall could never affect me, nor could I be mesmerized into giving it life. So by letting go of the suggestions, I bathed my thought in truth. This healing came quickly and beautifully, and I am so happy that I can see more of what we do in this spiritual sense of life. I am most grateful for the support of my Plainfield practitioner who tirelessly teaches me to walk with God. I had often read this, and now I get to live it more and more, and for this tireless dedication and commitment to demonstrating the truth, I am sincerely grateful. This love of Christian Science and humility to share new and at times already read materials gives me refreshing insights for which I am genuinely grateful. The second one is from California, and she writes that, "Tonight I want to thank God for all the blessings that I have because of this church. I so admire all your sincere dedication for all the work you do. I want to share a healing that I have had. I have lived in an apartment building for many years, and I have to say I really love it. I feel that God put me here. I love my neighbors and the neighborhood, except there is one problem, or there has been one problem. The manager of the apartment has not been good to me. Her apartment is across from mine. He made it so difficult for me to live here. I couldn't even talk in my own unit. When I came home, I would have to close the door fast so I would not have any contact with her. I have to say I wasn't the only one. She would scream at the tenants all the time. She will call me and do the same and complain about the slightest noise or accuse me of something that I did not do. I talked about this to my practitioner, and she reminded me that this lady did not have any power over me to control my life. She shared some truth about domination and said that she would support me in prayer. The situation got so bad that I decided to leave and spend some time looking for a place to move to. Things were very difficult and expensive, but I did not care. I just wanted to go. One day after praying about this, it became so clear to me to stop looking for a place, that where I am is the place to be. I obeyed and stopped looking, but I was still not comfortable because of the management. My practitioner told me to just bless her every time I saw her or thought of her. She added that usually when people do this, it is love they seek. I started doing that every day, and whenever she came across my thought. After a few months, I started not really seeing her in the hallway at all. And recently, the office announced that she will be moving to the first floor in another unit. I was so happy because I didn't have to have so much contact with her. And after 2 weeks, they announced that she will not be managing the building anymore. All the tenants were so relieved and thought that it was answered prayer. Since she had bullied so many, she mistreated so many previous tenants to the point that they left. I am so thankful for all the work of my practitioner and for what I am learning, that there is no situation that is beyond God's perfect control, and that I have the right to be happy and peaceful at where I live. Thank you. Thank you again with much love. I'm very happy to be here to hear all these beautiful testimonies. Again, glory to God for what He does for us.